I spent 60 tickets on 4 cards to test a brand new deck, only to realize that I'm now completely broke. That's why I decided to enter a Pauper League, in the hopes of earning back some currency. And when it comes to winning, there's no better deck to farm tickets than Caw Gates. Yay! With its perfect combination of control and tempo elements, I know that I have a fighting chance. And with Basilisk Gates by my side, I know that I will be able to turn already good creatures into powerful attackers in no time. But the question still remains. Is it enough to get my money back? Let's find out. As I sit down for my first game, I notice my opponent move to 5 and play a Basilisk Gate, followed by a Sacred Cat. Not wasting any time, I got rid of their first cat, and my opponent played a second one. However, they were missing land drops, giving me the time to develop my board, and they decided to concede. Game number 2 was a different story. I brought in my Parablast and a second copy of Dawnbringer Cleric to counter the removals and Saga. Unfortunately, I made a mistake by playing my lands in a non-optimal order, leading to a rough start. My opponent took advantage of this and kept developing their board, while I struggled to keep up. As my opponent continued to pile up the pressure, I played a brainstorm to search for some lands, and I found what I needed. With the board state against me, I knew I had to get rid of their flipped Saga, but they played a third one. The good news was that they had tap out, giving me an opening to play Guardian of the Guildpact, a powerful creature that, along with my gates, could quickly close out the game. However, my opponent had a Prismatic Strands already in their graveyard, which could be problematic for me to finish the game off, so I had to come up with a plan to deal with it. I decided to bait out one of their counter spells with one of my other spells and keep my counter spell in hand to deal with their strands. I played my spells in such a way that my opponent felt the need to counter, and I was able to play the Standard Bearer, preventing them from pumping their creatures if they found their Basilisk Gate. This move allowed me to attack with my Guardian freely, putting them on a turn to clock of dying. In a last-ditch effort to save themselves, my opponent hit me with all their creatures while playing all their cards in hand, but it was too late. I was able to pump my Guardian and, once more, keep up Counterspell and still in match number 1. I was matched up against a tough opponent who was playing a combo deck called Walls in round 2. Walls is a tricky deck that can be tough to play against. They can either be the creature version with an Altisor and Boarding Party, or a combo version with Freed from the Real. Based on the blue wall they played, I knew I was up against the latter. Then they searched for the creature that adds mana. I countered it, and found the Basilisk Gate to deal some damage. After that, it became a race to see who could kill the other faster. The Squadron hack helped me to put pressure in the air, but they found their second combo piece and locked me out of the game. For the second game, I added my Parablast against them, as I knew they were the combo version. I also kept Dawnbringer Cleric in case I need to hit their enchantment and not get killed. I played my hack and aggressively dealt with the creature that adds mana for them. They found a second land and playing one of their best creatures, which put me into a tough spot. I made a mistake and played the Cleric instead of the Tear hack, which wasn't ideal. They searched for a creature, but I had a counter and a Pyroblast to deal with them.
One eternity later.
They managed to resolve a Standard Bearer, which was problematic. I found a couple of counterspells and kept them in my hand until they were needed. They played a couple of creatures, but since they didn't have flying or reach, I could keep going over them. They were aiming for the combo, and I dealt with their first piece with Pyroblast, and countered the second one as well. They passed the turn, and a second copy of Counterspell was going to be very helpful.
Eventually,
I let the Venture Wall resolve, as all they could do was activate 3 times, which wasn't enough to kill me or to stay alive. I held the counter for the spell that could save them, like leading the Stampede, and they eventually conceded as there was nothing they could do. Game number 3 was a crucial one for me. I had to make sure that I didn't fall behind early on, and I was successful in doing just that. My opponent played a couple of walls, but I had some counters in my hand that helped me deal with their tutors. This bought me some time and kept them from getting more card advantage. I was lucky enough to draw Squadron hacks, which I decided to keep in my hand for the moment as my Basilisk Gate were not useful at this point. My opponent found their Venture Wall and started activating it, but their mana situation wasn't the best, which gave me some hope. I need to find answers quickly, and a combination of Brainstorm and Squadron hack helped me dig deeper into my library. I passed the turn waiting for the right moment to strike. My opponent failed to find anything relevant with Lead the Stampede, and I breathed a sign of relief. Another Brainstorm was just what I needed, and the removal spell I drew was exactly what I was looking for. I needed to deal with the Standard Bearer first before using Pyroblast, so I used Journey to Nowhere to get rid of it. My opponent blocked my attack with Aquarian Ranger, but I was happy to accept the trade and continue to chip away their field. My opponent tried to recover by getting back the Venture Wall, but I had a second Pyroblast in my hand that I could use to take care of it. This gave me the chance to put my flyer once again, attack with everything, and get rid of their mana wall. After realizing there was nothing else they could do, my opponent forfeited the match, and I was happy to have won. We are in match number 3 and my opponent is playing Rakdos Burn. For those who don't know, this is a deck that relies on the Madness mechanic to reduce their opponent's life total. It's a tough deck to play against, but I'm ready for the challenge. As the game begins, I'm strategizing how to preserve my life points, knowing that gaining life is a priority. My plan is to play 2 Sacred Cats, which should be good enough to put me ahead. I'm not putting them right now, as I don't want to give my opponent the opportunity to hit them with removal. Instead, I prefer to develop my board and keep my options open. Next, I notice that Fumes is a useless card in my hand, so I make the decision to cycle it at the end of the turn. This way, I can draw a more useful card and maintain my momentum in the game. Things start to get interesting when I attack, and my opponent makes the mistake of playing the creature after blockers have been declared. This mistake gives me the upper hand, and I am able to deal with the creature while holding strands. With the board clear, I decide to pump my remaining cat and regain many life points in one strike. Once again, I prevented any damage with strands, and in my turn, my opponent realizes that this game is over. We are post-sideboard, and I brought in 4 copies of Pyroblast and the second copy of Cleric while cutting most of my removal. It's time to see how this new strategy will pay off. As the game begins, things are heating up. My opponent kills my cat and I have to start rebuilding my board from scratch. It's not an easy task, but I'm determined to come out on top. So I decide to play a Saga and hack and pass, and with the help of Brainstorm, I'm able to put a hack into my library and search for it by playing a second copy. This way, I can have more flyers on the board and better control of the game. My opponent isn't giving up so easily though. They try to kill my board again, but I'm ready this time. I use my strands from my graveyard to save my flyers when my opponent tries to play a looting, and I decided to counter it, and they realize it's time to concede. This time we are up against Orhzov Ephemerate. They are known for playing creatures with enter the battlefield effects, which can give them card advantage and outvalue their opponents. I started with a slow hand, but my opponent played a couple of lands that gave me the hint of their deck. I knew I had to be careful and take control of the game early on. So I played a couple of hacks and started attacking in the air, putting pressure on my opponent. They start dealing with my creatures one by one, but I had a plan in mind. I used Dawnbringer Cleric to take out their dog enchantment, while holding onto my counterspell. They pass the turn and kill one of my creatures. My opponent played a Goliath Paladin, and while my initial thought was to counter it, I decided to let it resolve and take the initiative by removing their creature with my removal spell. They tried to protect it, but it was no use. Now I had the upper hand, just as I planned. My opponent tried to take back the initiative by playing a second Goliath, but this time I countered it. I had to ensure that I didn't take any combat damage, so I put 2 blockers and a strand in my graveyard to make sure of that. As the game progressed, I kept up the momentum by attacking them with my creatures, and Basilisk Gate helped me get through. They were getting a lot of card draw from Ephemerate, but they had a little board presence, so I knew we were good for now. After a few more turns, I managed to take over the game by countering the removal spell and securing the victory in game number 1. It was a close match, but I managed to come on top. As I entered game number 2, I realized I still didn't have any sideboard against Orhzov Ephemerate, so I decided to stick with my original plan. The game started slow with my opponent playing a couple of lands, giving me the impression that they were going for a more defensive strategy this time. I played a Saga and discarded a Sacred Cat, knowing that I could embalm it later from the graveyard. My opponent continued to play defensively, so I started to develop my board and attack, and kill one of my cat during my turn. But I kept pushing forward. They passed again, allowing me to play more spell and make some progress. Finally, my opponent played a creature, but I could feel they had Ephemerate in hand, so I decided to counter it. It was a risky move, but it paid off. I managed to find a third cat and another copy of Counterspell, so I passed the turn again. My opponent played more creatures as the game progressed, but I eventually found a Guardian of the Guild pack. With 2 Basilisk Gates already in play, I knew the game could end in seconds if they didn't have a second unmake to deal with it. They tried to deal with my glider, but I countered their spell. They played more creatures, but it was time for my Guardian to attack. They attempted to shrink my board, but a second spell pierce denied them that opportunity. After this, my opponent realized they couldn't turn the game around, so they surrendered. I'm in the final match of the tournament, and my opponent is running a mono-blue Faeries deck. As the game starts, I decided to play a cat, but being on the draft puts me at an immediate disadvantage. My opponent had already played a ninja, which was a clear sign that they were ready to pounce. And I was struggling to find another blocker as my opponent's creatures kept coming. I knew I had to think fast. I tried to build some time with strands, but it was not an ideal position for me. My opponent was relentless, constantly adding more creatures to the board and leaving me in a precarious position. In the heat of the moment, I forgot that my opponent still had the flesh creature in hand, and that mistake proved costly. I had put myself in an even worse position, and my chances of winning the game were fading fast. Eventually, I had no choice but to concede the game, and with it, my dreams of winning the trophy started to disappear. As we headed into the post-cyber game, I felt more confident. I decided to play it safe and started off with a cat, passing the turn. However, I knew better than to attack the following turn, as my opponent could easily have the flash creature in hand. Instead, I played a squadron hack and passed the turn. To my surprise, my opponent tapped out. With the path clear, I attacked with my cat, knowing that my opponent was not willing to trade for the cat. They counter-attacked, but I decided not to block, as I was wary of their combat tricks. Instead, I cast another brainstorm and searched for lands, eventually finding a way to get rid of their creature. But my opponent wasn't going down without a fight. They played 2 more creatures, but I was ready for them this time. I attacked again, but they had a creature that could get rid of my cat. I cast a third brainstorm and battled for it to resolve, knowing that the interaction with the squadron hack was key to winning this game. Things were looking up for me, and I even managed to pump a hack instead of the token to avoid my opponent's snap trick. I played 2 spells and passed the turn post-combat. From there, I played a Basilisk Gate and proceeded to pump another hack and attack in the air. I played 2 more flyers, and while my opponent managed to get through and resolve some spells, I remained calm and focused. Finally, I found a Guardian of the Guild pack. I played it past the turn, and my opponent promptly scooped. In game 3, I was optimistic as I kept my hand, but the fear of the early ninja was ever present. As expected, my opponent played a ninja, but I found removal for it, avoiding a repeat of the first game. They then played a morph creature, but I decided to take it slow and play a saga to start developing my board. The game progressed with my opponent playing a few creatures. When they attacked with the morph creature, I suspected they have mutagenic growth in hand to pump it, so I didn't take any chances and didn't block it. They denied my plans on the following turn, so I played a preordain to dig for better cards. I then resolved a squadron hack, allowing me to develop my board further. The game was at standstill, and I was waiting for an opportunity to make a move. They attacked in the air, and I passed the turn after finding Brainstorm. I then decided to battle for the Brainstorm as the squadron hack value was too good to pass up. I found more counters and more removal spells, keeping both as backup plans while developing my board further. As the board stalled, I tried to do some cheap damage and wait. They played Mutagenic Growth to get rid of one of my brokers, but I created a treasure token, untap it, and drew a Basilisk Gate. With the Guardian with 2 counters represented a 2-turn clock kill, with removal as a backup, so I decided to go for the kill. They played a colorless creature to prevent some damage, but since I had removal in hand, it was easy for me to deal with it, pump the Guardian, and claim the trophy and get my money back.
Now, if you're new to Pauper and want to test other cool decks, click into that playlist. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.